All right, let's take a look at the Ford Big Board. Built for America, built Ford proud. Jayson Tatum has been a scoring machine after a loss this postseason. He's scoring over 32 points per game, which ranks first in team history in a single postseason. He is ahead of John Havlicek and Larry Bird. So what has been the key to bouncing back after a bad game? Here's Jayson.
I think I do a really good job of, after I sleep it off, regardless if I have 10 points or 46 points, the next day is the next day, and whatever happened, happened. I'm a big believer you can't change what happened.
All right, Ryan McDonough joins us for this deep dive. I also have Chris Forsberg, Phil Perry will join the conversation in just a second. Ryan, I'm going to kind of throw you into the fire here because you weren't here yesterday when there was a spirited discussion about what we have seen from Jayson Tatum and his inconsistencies thus far in the postseason. And I think one of my frustrations with him has been sometimes when he has a really good game, very proud of himself, loves to pat himself on the back and kind of strut around, and then he looks terrible in the next game. But it feels like, at least to me, based on his post-game comments, that maybe an important lesson has been learned here, and we're going to see a different, more urgent Jayson Tatum tomorrow night in Miami.
I certainly hope so, Trenni. As Jayson Tatum goes, so go the Celtics. I think Celtics fans, if they want more consistency from the young man in the playoffs, keep in mind we're in the conference finals. Jayson's been there a number of times in his career, but he's still a very young player. He has been the best player on the team offensively. So I think it's important to keep your expectations in check as far as what is realistic from a player of this age. I think he's played phenomenally well this year. I love how he's developed, especially as a passer. I think that aspect of his game has really grown. So I know we're sitting here tied to a huge Game 5 in Miami tomorrow night, but I expect Tatum to show up in a big way. I think the Celtics are going to win tomorrow night and then go on to win the series.
I told you yesterday, Trenni, that I thought Sean Grande had a great tweet, like how many quiet games Paul Pierce had in 2008. And now he had the luxury of Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen to sort of pick him up, and don't necessarily know if Jayson has that luxury with this team, although Jaylen Brown is certainly capable. But we get so caught up in the micro of, oh my God, he had one bad game, and that we forget to sort of zoom out at the 10,000-foot view and realize how good he's been. Certainly the ultimate sign of a superstar is to be consistent in these moments, and Jayson is still learning how to do this. But I do think that it's remarkable how, after the, 5 losses in the postseason, each one he has come back. And last night wasn't going punch for punch with Giannis, but it was still getting to the free throw line, taking the stress off your team, making the right pass, being active on the glass, and more than anything, the numbers for the tracking on his defense. 0 for 9 shooting against Jayson Tatum last night. Jimmy Butler was 0 for 3. That's the sign to me of someone who understood it wasn't good enough in Game 3, and he came back. I
actually found last night to be one of his more impressive performances for the reasons that you just listed, Chris, because, okay, he had 31 points, which is a great final stat line, but they were sort of a quiet 31, and they were workmanlike. And there have been so many other times, I feel like, this postseason where he tried to put the entire team on his shoulders, and he did it, but in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. And like you let Derek White set the tone. You're not trying to force the issue early on, and certainly getting to the line was the key to me. Just like easy points sometimes when you're struggling, you just need to see the ball go through the basket. I need Ryan to calm me down, though. The one thing I'm worried about, Ryan, is that he's played a ton of games. He had USA basketball last year, ton of minutes this year, 90 games. He's like 800 more minutes than anybody else in this series, and he airballed a couple jumpers. In these two physical series, is he going to be okay? Is he going to be able to get to the finish line in a series like this?
I hope so, Chris. I mean, that certainly is reason for concern. The wear and tear, the mileage, which you mentioned, and the shoulder, the stinger coming into last night's game. We saw how it looked coming out of Game 3, and that was the biggest question I had for the Celtics. If Jayson Tatum wasn't healthy going into Game 4 against this Miami Heat opponent and this defense, I think the Celtics were in a lot of trouble. But to his credit, he scored 30-plus points in a game where points were tough to come by. I mean, Miami only had 82 for the game. 30 of those were in garbage time in the fourth quarter because the Celtics were ahead by so many. So I think any Celtics fans who are picking apart Jayson Tatum, they're being way too critical of the young man. As I mentioned, as an executive, a former executive, I really like the improvement this year with the playmaking. I remember a game in Washington midseason. I thought he started distributing the ball a lot better than I'd seen him distribute it in the past. And I think the team's really taken off because of that. So as long as his shoulder's okay, I expect the Celtics to win tomorrow night. And I think Tatum will carry this team. I'm fully expecting a Boston and Golden State finals. And I personally look forward to see see Jayson Tatum and Andrew Wiggins line up, and obviously all the rest of the talent, especially in the backcourt, on the Warriors roster as well.
Yeah, I can't lie. When I looked up at the scoreboard and I saw him headed to the bench with like 8.5 minutes left in the game last night, I was like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, right.
He can rest those legs. All right, speaking of a rest, Chris, you work a lot. So we're just going to give you just a quick breather. In time for this Chevrolet Sports Central update. The Celtics bounced back in a big way in Game 4. Robert Williams, a big reason for it. 12 points, 9 boards, 2 blocks in 19 minutes. That is efficient and productive. Not only that, Williams is a certified Bam Adebayo stopper. Let's take a look now at Carrying the Load, which is presented by the Chevrolet Silverado. Robert Williams' biggest impact this series may be limiting Adebayo. With Williams out in Game 3, Bam put up 31 points, 10 boards, 6 assists. He also had 4 steals. But in Games 1, 2, and 4, he's averaged only 8 points, 6 rebounds, and fewer than 2 assists. So let's bring Phil Perry into this part of the conversation. Just how important, Phil, in your... Oh, I thought we were giving you a breather, Chris Forsberg.
You tried to get me out of a Robert Williams block? Like,
I can't even, like, listen, brain's kind of all over the place. Okay, I'm going to let Phil speak this first, though, on Robert Williams, your best friend. Is it possible to say that he is, next to Jayson Tatum, the second most important player in this series? Not necessarily on this team, but in this series.
I think he might be in this series because of what we saw him do in Game 4 in terms of impacting the number of shots that he impacted. And I know Miami couldn't hit the ocean in that game, but it's just like he is so impactful near the rim. They missed how many bunnies, how many little floaters in the paint, and he doesn't get his hands on all of those, but I think he impacts about 90% of them. And so to start a game 18-1 in that first quarter, that's not going to be consistent. But for him to make the defensive impact that he's made, even at far less than 100% Forsberg, I think that is just massive to this team. And so for this series, and given everything Bam Adebayo did to this team in Game 3 when he wasn't on the floor, I think he might be the second most important Celtic.
Ryan, who's more important? Marcus Smart, who was missing last night in a blowout, but that's happened before when Robert Williams isn't on the court as well, or Robert Williams? Who's more important to this team's success?
Well, I'll answer this question 2 ways, Trenni. I agree with Phil's assessment. In this series, I think Robert Williams is more important because of Bam Adebayo and his presence. We saw the numbers right there as far as what Robert's done. And I thought the combination of Robert Williams and Al Horford really put a lid on the rim last night, especially early in that game when Miami couldn't score. It was 18-1, as Phil mentioned, out of the gate. So I think the combination of those two, that's one of the things that's up for debate, guys, in the modern NBA is how do two bigs work together? Can they play together? Can a team generate enough offense? Well, the Celtics are showing you don't need to generate a ton of offense when you have Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown who can do it individually by themselves, and then 2 elite defenders at the rim. And so I think in this series, Robert Williams is more impactful. And if the Celtics win, which I'm anticipating, and they play the Warriors in the finals, I think then that becomes a series where Marcus Smart is most impactful. Boston needs Smart back healthy to go up against the mighty Warriors.
And I think it's important, as much as I want to sit here and fawn over Robert Williams, I must say, like Al Horford bouncing back. Bam torched him the other night. And maybe I was just seeing that it wasn't Robert Williams, it was Daniel Tice out there. Little flashback to the 2020 bubble. Bam was on a different level. Al took that challenge last night and really, but then having Rob as the help defender to sort of come over, force them into it. I thought it was telling that the Heat shot 44%, Robert Williams' jersey number, by the way, of their shots in the mid-range because they didn't want to go at the rim, one of their lower outputs near the rim. And so I think that's what Rob does. He just changes the way you play just as a threat. And I agree with what Ryan said, because I thought last round you could get through without Robert Williams because you didn't need him. You didn't want him guarding Giannis. That's a tough matchup for him. So Marcus was more important in that series and chasing Drew Holiday and doing all that. But in this series, it's sort of flipped. You can get by because, let's face it, like Max Strus has had a big bucket, but like you can get away without not having Marcus. It does change in the next round if you're looking to what, and the Celtics better hope they're fully whole in that instance.
Right. At times last night, Robert Williams didn't look totally himself. There is still some swelling and some pain management and even limitations with that knee. From an executive perspective, how would you say, are they handling Robert Williams the right way?
I think so. I love that they got a big lead last night and were able to play him only 19 minutes in that game. I thought that was huge for the series going forward, and then potentially looking beyond to the finals if they are able to advance past a tough Miami opponent. So I think they're looking at Robert the right way. In the modern NBA, guys, that's a complex conversation with multiple parties involved. Obviously the team, their medical staff, and then Robert Williams and the people close to him, his agent in particular. So he is on a long-term contract. He signed the extension last offseason, so they have him under contract financially for a while. But with a talented young player, you want to make sure you do what's in his best long-term interest in terms of keeping him healthy, prolonging his career, which obviously is in the best interest of the franchise as well. So I think this will be a day-to-day thing. We're certainly, if the Celtics can win in 6 games, if they can close this out by winning the next 2 and then have a gap between Eastern Conference Finals and the NBA Finals, that would give Williams more time to rest and recover, as would it give Smart more time to rest and recover. I think that would be huge for Boston, which is why I think tomorrow night's Game 5 in Miami is so pivotal.
I need Robert Williams out there just from aesthetic purposes. Like, I love watching them play when he's out there. I just think it's different. It's a different energy. It's a different vibe. He's just so different than every other player in the NBA. So I don't know what he needs. Like, I'll give him some cryo chamber on that knee, whatever it takes. I'm worried about the plane. I'll be home rubbing my Robert Williams bobblehead, hoping that he is out there.
I would just say I think he's too important in the series for the Celtics to really manage him game to game. Like, I think if there's any way he can go in Game 5, you have to play him. And if you can manage him within the game, like they did in Game 4, then go ahead and do that. But I think you have to have him out there as much as you can because he's that important.
Yeah, it is a big game tomorrow night, even though it will not decide the series. All right, well, the Boston Globe's Dan Shaughnessy, Mr. Sunshine, writing this about the Celtics. Quote, if the Celtics don't win this series and advance to the NBA Finals, this will go down as one of the biggest blown opportunities in Boston sports history. Let's play a little game where we start right there with Take Your Pick. Phil, take your pick. Is it fair to be talking about blown opportunities right now after they came out and beat and just blew the doors off of the Miami Heat last night? Because honestly, and you know I love Shaughnessy, but I'm like, boy, that's interesting timing, Dan Shaughnessy. Like, maybe this is better if they lost again. I don't know.
Okay, so always dangerous to try to get inside the head of Dan Shaughnessy, right? But here's my effort as far as that goes. I think what he's saying is, look at what happened in Game 4. Look at how much better this Celtics team is than the Heat. There is no way they can lose to these guys. And if they do, my goodness, what an upset that would be. What a disappointment that would be for those of us here in Boston. I just question the extreme nature of the comment, right? Because we've seen a lot of disappointments here, and I'm not sure this would crack the top 3 as wide as the talent gap is, Trenni.
Ryan, what do you think? Yes or no, is right now the right time to be talking about blown opportunities?
No, I think they should win this series. I think all the numbers indicate that. If you look at how many quarters they've won, total points and all that, it strongly points in favor of the Celtics. Before the playoffs, and this isn't as a Boston homer, this is a guy who's doing national media now, I picked the Celtics to win the Eastern Conference and advance to the NBA Finals. So I think they should be in the finals. But for me, and Trenni and Phil, remember, you're talking to a guy who was in the Staples Center in 2010 in the Celtics front office when we had a 14-point lead in the second half of Game 7 of the NBA Finals against the LA Lakers and watched Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol, and those guys bring it back. So to me, that stands as a disappointment. We're about 15 minutes from an NBA championship. This is a good opportunity, but they are playing the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference in Miami, and they do have to win on the road. So no, I think that would be a leap too far for me, especially given the injuries the Celtics are facing.
All right, well, one of the storylines going into this, and I think a way a lot of us thought, was that Miami is maybe not the more talented team, but Ryan, they're tougher, they're grittier. You know, the Celtics aren't quite there yet in the mentality. So take your pick. Who's the tougher team now that you've watched 4 games, Miami or Boston?
Boston. I'd put Boston's toughness and physicality up against any team in the league. And I say that, just go position by position, starting in the backcourt with Marcus Smart when he's healthy. He's a tough physical dude. On the wing, Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, the way those guys are put together. And then in the front court, we've talked a lot in this segment about the physicality and rim protection of Robert Williams and Al Horford. You see Grant Williams there in the clip. So no, this is a tough physical team. And that's one of the things that's really stood out to me, guys, throughout the series is Boston's size advantage advantage in their physicality advantage. I know Miami has that reputation, but looking player for player and matchup for matchup, Miami is undersized at just about every possession. That's why when the ball goes up and it's a 50-50 ball off the backboard or on the floor, I really like the Celtics' chances to come up with it.
All right, I want to get this last one in really quickly. Phil, I'm going to start with you. Everybody be quick on your answers. Who would you rather be right now, the more talented Celtics or the Heat with home court advantage? I'm going Celtics. Who are you picking, Phil?
I don't think there's any question. I'd rather be the Celtics. They've played well on the road. They are the more talented team. I think they're the deeper team. I think even though they're banged up, I think they're the less banged up team. Ryan, I'd want to be the Celtics right now.
Boston, better talent, better depth. They have experience. Everything points in their favor. They just got to get it done starting in Game 5 tomorrow night.
Yeah, and they've proved that they can win on the road. They did it in Milwaukee and in Brooklyn and already in Miami. Well, speaking of Miami, Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. The Celtics are in Miami for Game 5 against the Heat on Wednesday night. We're going to get you ready starting at 7. Our playoff coverage is brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and Arbella Insurance.